I think we're ready, Chair Hawkins.
Dr. Booker says he went to that meeting. I guess it's the other one.
Okay.
Are we live? All right. Good evening. Welcome to Police Commission. It's the first meeting for some of the folks here. Today is Thursday, July 11th. I am your chair, Jensina Hawkins. For the benefit of our new commissioners, one section of the bylaws I wanted to call to your attention regards attendance expectations. It's on Article 7, Item 6. Any member who misses more than 3 consecutive regular commission meetings or misses more than 4 meetings in a 12-month period with or without a quorum and without having been given a leave of absence by the commission chair may be removed by the city council upon recommendation of the commission. If members are unable to attend a meeting of the commission or a committee, they shall notify city staff as soon as possible. That being said, we can move into business for the evening. And so we will review the agenda for this evening. I have 2 additions to add time for Beatrice Otero from the Independent Independent Police Auditor's Office and for Holly to give us a couple of updates. I plan to have them speak in between welcoming the new police commission members and the Human Rights Commission update from Dr. Sylvia Booker. What was the verbiage on that?
By universal consent, we're just going to add that unless he has any objections.
And they're added now to the agenda. Our previous meeting recap. We bid farewell to 3 commissioners. That was Scott Lemons, Silver Mogart, and of course the late Chair Boggs. We held elections. As a result of those elections, I am your chair, and Sean Shivers to my left is your vice chair for the next 12 months. We updated our policy recommendation for naloxone, and I'd say that that verbiage has been carried into the updated policy that was signed by the chief. For reviewing minutes, we have 2 months worth of minutes to review because we had a question last month regarding the May 2024 minutes. Commissioner Lemons has since removed his request for an edit. He agreed that Commissioner Lyden had recorded that correctly, that what he was referring to was at the CRB meeting, not at the police commission meeting. So with that objection removed, I would like a motion to approve the May 2024 minutes.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Reedy. And now we can vote on it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor of approving the May 2024 meetings as stated, as given in our packet, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please state nay. And any
Abstain.
Thank you, Commissioner Parham. So we have mostly ayes. Commissioner Parham is abstaining. For the June 2024 minutes in our packet, I'm looking for a motion to approve June 2024.
So moved.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Second? Second. I'm sorry, who was that? Thank you, Commissioner Thorson. Seconded by Commissioner Thorson. All in favor of approving the June 2024 minutes as included in your packet, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. And are there any abstentions? Hearing none.
Abstain.
Thank you, Commissioner Hart. Abstention for Commissioner Hart. June 2024 minutes are now passed, resolved. How does that, what is the term?
Approved.
Approved. Thank you. All right. So now we get into the fun part of tonight's meeting. We get to welcome our new police commission members. What I'd like to do is go with a, we'll start off with the incumbent police commission members. I want us to share when our term began, our profession. I was going to say day job, but then that sounded kind of insulting to folks that maybe have night jobs. So our profession and volunteer activities. If you are currently involved in other volunteer efforts in our community, we would love to hear about those. I will go first and I will have Vice Chair Shivers go after. So I'm Jensina Hawkins. I'm your new chair. I started my term as a police commissioner in December of 2022. By day, I train doctors and their staff how to use their computer systems. And I am also serving as the vice chair of the Churchill area laborers. I think that's it. Okay, Vice Chair Shivers.
Yeah, my name is Sean Shivers. I've been on the police commission since 2017. I was appointed to fill a vacancy. So I've been here a while. Without Silver, I'm now the longest serving commissioner on the commission. Profession. I work in nonprofits during my day job. Occasionally run political campaigns throughout the city as well. And as far as volunteering is concerned, I volunteered all over the place. Most recently on the school board levies and bonds with the Democratic Party, with Planned Parenthood, and various other places around the city.
Thank you. Councilor Ye.
Thank you. So I'm Jennifer Gay. I'm the city councilor for Ward 4, which is Northeast Eugene. And this was my first committee assignment when I joined city council. So it's got a special place in my heart for that reason. I think that was 2017. I think I started the same year as Sean. Let's see. So my day job, I work for community supported shelters. And I do a number of volunteer things in all of my spare time, but my most recent one that I'm excited about is I recently joined the League of Women Voters, and I'm really enjoying learning about that organization.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyman.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome to our new members. I'm Alan Lyman. I just completed a 3-year term on this commission that was concurrent. I was the liaison from the Civilian Review Board, so I was doing both of those. And that was my volunteer work for the moment. And the CRB ended, and I'm now starting a 3-year term also exclusively with you folks. And my day job, I have a solo law practice representing employees primarily for pay issues like Fair Labor Standards Act, that kind of thing. And I've been the municipal judge of the city of Veneta for like 11 to 12 years. Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Parra.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Commissioner Parham. In my daytime job, I actually work for Salobonia Healing Circles as a healing circle facilitator. And then in my time as that, I actually am a crisis committee chair, which means that I address crises in Black communities by offering healing circles to those people. I also do event staffing, and I work at the Oregon Country Fair for 8 days, and then I go out to Burning Man and I do waste management at Burning Man. Yeah, and I have a dog that I really love, and the work that I do on the police commission is super important to me as well. and that is why I'm here tonight, despite prior commitments and engagements.
Thank you. Councilors elected.
Well, welcome, JC Tina. I've been a city councilor for 18 years. But I'm relatively new to the police commission. I've been on 3 years. Right, like that. So welcome all to this group. Other volunteer activities besides being a city councilor takes up a lot of time. And that's pretty much because they lie to you when you become a city councilor and tell you that they don't tell you that there's a police commission and a budget committee and then all these other committees and all that other stuff that you need to do as a councilor. So that's take up.
Thank you. Commissioner Rady.
My profession. I'm a professional.
I forgot
Oh, yes. What's your profession, sir?
my day job, which is why I was late. Sorry. I am the assistant director for the Oregon Department of Energy. So all the people that work on energy efficiency, climate change, sustainable transportation, planning, electric vehicles, and renewable energy.
I didn't even know that. Actually, you worked for the state. Which covers a lot.
Right. Whenever any of my staff people write the state, or you should say Oregon, because the state sounds so impressive.
Commissioner Rady.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm retired. I'm currently working as a historian, writing a massive tome. I have been I'm also the president of the Free Speech Movement Archives of UC Berkeley, approaching our 60th anniversary and about to finish our archival work, I believe. I've worked in medicine, I've worked in longshore, I've worked in publishing, I've been a publisher and I ran a company. I've coached youth soccer for 16 years before my legs gave up. I worked with a number of community organizations at the NAACP and with CALC and with the Eugene Peace Choir. And I keep doing stuff. Yeah.
Thank you.
Been arrested probably more than anyone else on this.
Were you there in 64?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I was
I
the
got
youngest
there
member of the
first, too.
executive.
So you're one of those people. You're like famous or infamous.
I was just so.
That's awesome.
Well, I don't think we were having a contest for number of arrests, but I'm willing to let you win.
I believe I'm a job.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Thorson, how do you follow that? Never been arrested.
You should try it.
I'm Tina Thorson.
I arranged it.
I've probably done my first meeting, so I'm brand new. My day job, I work in project management and civil engineering firm here in town. Volunteer opportunities. So my first one in life was my biggest one. I volunteered to serve in the United States military, which I'm very proud of. Current volunteer opportunity is I'm on the strategic planning committee for lane transit. And I think I hit all the points and I've never been arrested. But
Which branch of the Navy? Or which branch was it?
it wasn't.
Did I just
Yeah.
slide it in there like
You did,
like I
yeah.
told you? I thought it was Navy, but I wanted to. Thank you. Commissioner Folks.
Hello, my name is Amelia Folks, and I just started my term July 1st of this year. I'm very excited to be here. I work for the Oregon Department of Human Services Hearings Unit, specifically for Oregon Department of Human Services. So folks who are receiving food stamps, SNAP benefits, cash aid, daycare assistance, medical, Medicaid. If they have an issue or do not agree with the decision that the department has made, they come to us. So we go through the there's fancy words. We go through the process and ideally we help them get what they need. We can help. That's what they do. I don't currently volunteer except now, but previously it was the coffin races. I don't know if you all remember those. Those were fun. So I did that, and then for KLCC Beer Fest.
Commissioner Brooks also works for the state. That's good. All right, and last but not least,
Jack. Protested the state.
Yeah, that's true. Commissioner Price.
Hello, I'm Jason Price. Pleasure to meet all of you. This is my first term with the Police Commission. Looking forward to serving. Professionally, I am property management. Have been for the past over 10 years now. Professionally and for volunteering, have kind of morphed together with different housing agencies, supportive services, and Mission of Hope and Home of Hope and projects like that. It's been great.
Thank you. Any questions for our new commissioners and for the incumbents before we jump right into the next topic?
I have one thing to mention, especially going off of the coffin races. One of the things we do on the police commission, we try to get out and inform the community about what we do. So that there will be plenty of opportunities to go to events like that and share what we do. So glad to have you all on board.
This is true. Thank you, Vice Chair. All right, so the part that I was going to insert in here.
Chair Hawkins, can I ask a question? You got some pretty important people sitting around the table here that
And you can
maybe
have your own time on the agenda.
we do.
Yes.
And where do I see that on my own, on the agenda?
Well, there's this part called Chief's Report,
So you would like me to introduce Holly and give her time to introduce
and
herself?
there's also a part for
And
Sergeant
for-
Perron.
Okay, I'll wait until then.
And we are very familiar with Holly, but you know what? I have no objection to letting you do introductions for your team chief.
I'll wait till the chief's report and I'll use my time as chief's report to make sure I introduce these two amazing staff support members.
Okay, thank you. All right, Holly, you had an update for us from the city, correct?
Right. I just wanted to let you all know, in your orientations that you had recently, I mentioned that the City of Eugene City Manager's Office is going to be providing a boards and commissions training for you all, and it goes over all of the intricacies of being on the boards and commissions and public meetings law and all of that. I just found out that's going to take place on August 22nd at 1 p.m. I'm still waiting for further details. Once I get that information, I will email that to you. I believe that there'll be an option to meet in person as well as virtual. If you're not able to attend, I will share that recording with you so you can at least, get that information. But it is called a required training, but you guys are volunteers, so you're not forced to come in. I know that's probably right in the middle of some of your work days. So if you can make that happen, that would be great. But again, I'll be sending that information out as soon as I get it.
Is that only for new members, Holly?
It's for all commission members. So new, our incumbents, our, current members, everyone.
How long?
I think it's going to be like an hour or so. Yeah.
We also have online Beatrice Otero from the Independent Police Auditor's Office. We're a little bit earlier than I had anticipated. Good evening, Beatrice.
Hi, Jensina. Thank you. So I just wanted to make a brief announcement about upcoming volunteer opportunities. I am working in collaboration with the Office of Equity and Community Engagement, and we are sort of forming a plan for upcoming summer events that are taking place. For a couple of these events, the city is already a sponsor, so the city automatically has a booth. And right now we're trying to fine tune the details of whether we would be joining that booth or having an additional booth ourselves. But I always try to extend the invite out to Police Commission, CRB, HRC, anybody who is interested in joining to share your work and information regarding the things that you're doing. So I don't know if Holly or Jensina have already sent out information. I don't know how much into detail to go to, but we have Asian celebration. National, well, no, that's a different one, Pride in the Park and Aloha Festival that are coming up. So if anybody is interested, I can send more information and we can go from there to sort of fine tune details of shifts that people are interested in participating in. And if you have any materials from Police Commission that
Beatrice, off the top of your head, do you happen to have the dates for those 3 events?
let's see, Asian Celebration is Saturday, July 27th, I believe from 10 to 7. Pride in the Park is Saturday, August 10th from 10 to 7 as well. Those might be a bit off, but generally they're all day events. And then Aloha Festival is Saturday, August 24th.
We are not required to be there for the entire
No,
duration.
not at all. Part of the reason why I like to extend out the invite is so that we can sort of shift the workout. You know, if you can do 1 hour, 2 hours, you know, however long you have available, would be appreciated.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. And it's my understanding that CRB, Civilian Review Board, did not have a meeting this month. Is that correct?
That is correct. We had to cancel our meeting on Tuesday, and the CRB takes a break in August. So the next time they will be meeting is September. And by then, Clay, who is should be appointed the liaison from the CRB, will be able to update you guys on their work.
Okay, we'll look forward to receiving his liaison update in September. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's right. Ellen has agreed to be placement.
Clay's gonna school us. He is fantastic, will be a great addition to the.
I agree. I'm very excited about his presence. And also online, we have Dr. Silke Booker, who is on the Human Rights Commission. He has not been officially confirmed by City Council yet as a liaison. So tonight he is bringing us a report for the Human Rights Commission, not a liaison update.
Well, hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Booker. It's good to see you.
Good evening, good to see you too. I'll be giving the liaison report and then I'll be logging off. Here are a few items for the Police Commission from the Human Rights Commission. The Human Rights Commission would like to know the prioritized work plan items that the Police Commission is working on that the Human Rights Commission could collaborate on or provide support. The next item is the Human Rights Commission. Oh, just let me know if you're ready for me to go to the next item. I don't want to rush through.
Go ahead and we'll ask questions when you're finished.
Okay. Next item, the Human Rights Commission Homeless Poverty Work Group would like to share the unsanctioned posting protocols with the Police Commission for them to review and consider procedural suggestions for the police protocols when engaging with encampments or coordinating with social service organizations in accordance with ORS 195.505. The next item, the Human Rights Commission will be working on a proposal for protocol impacting victims of hate crimes with an explicit focus on the Black community. The next item, the Human Rights Commission is looking for information from the City of Eugene Police Department about the impact on the Rights Assistance Program being shifted from a direct service model to a pass-through agency for the Department of Justice. Next item, Human Rights Commission is looking for updates on the progress of the cultural audit of EPD. And then finally, the Human Rights Commission would like to offer an opportunity for the Police Commission to appoint a delegate to attend Human Rights Commission meetings and present on Police Commission work on a routine basis in conjunction with EPD liaison reports. Let me know if you need me to repeat anything.
Can you repeat the ORS on the homeless rights work group item?
Yes, it was ORS 195.505.
Well, you learned from the previous liaison and you brought a shopping cart. I'm impressed, Dr. Booker.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm just saying that you learned well from the previous liaison and you brought a shopping cart for us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
We have a question from Commissioner Parham.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Commissioner Parham.
Yeah, I'd like to volunteer to be the delegate for that committee. As the delegate for that position that you were just brought up.
Thank you for expressing that.
I'm not sure of the protocol to assign a liaison from the police commission to the human rights. I don't know if it's as simply as an offer or you guys have to vote on it. But they wanted to make sure that they extended the offer to appoint somebody to attend human rights commission meetings. Be a good way to link information that might be missed.
It's my understanding that the chair is able to, the police commission chair is able to do that in order to have an officially delegated liaison to Human Rights Commission. I believe we would need to update our bylaws and possibly run it through city council if I understand correctly.
The point of the Human Rights Commission being a liaison to the police commission is to have people like. So it's not you don't have two liaisons going both ways, just one. Not pretty concept. That's how we do it for all of them.
I'm happy to take up that conversation with the Human Rights Chair, Dr. Barker. Thank you for bringing that.
What ask will be a question?
Yes.
What would this position do that you would?
You probably should discuss that with the chair.
Okay, we can have that discussion when we are appointed our liaison from Human Rights Commission. Chief Skinner, some of the items that Dr. Booker listed have questions for you. If you want to speak to those.
It's not something that I can speak to on the cuff. So if we can, I think we took good notes. We'll pull something together. So next meeting we'll be able to answer.
Thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Booker? Thank you. Dr. Booker, thank you very much for joining. Oh, I see Commissioner Parham, you have your hand up. Is that again or still?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Dr. Booker, thank you very much for joining us.
I don't know where you have a good meeting.
We will move into commissioners' comments. I would ask the city councilor, since we don't have liaisons from HRC and CRB this evening, I would like for the city councilors to include city council liaison reports in your commissioner comments this evening. I'll begin with Vice Chair Shivers.
I hope everybody out there is staying cool. My aunt has recently passed from heat stroke as the heat waves rock the western coast. So I hope everybody out there is staying safe.
Very sorry to hear that, Sean. Councilor Ye?
Yeah, so just welcome to all of our new folks. I'm so glad you're all here. We get to meet you in person. And I do not have any other personal comments, and I don't think I have anything to liaison.
Okay. Councilor Zan,
What were the two?
commissioner comments and liaison reports.
No, I mean the two, one that things on the first one. HRC and,
Right, we don't have an HRC or CW liaison tonight.
well, neither of us, or you know, on either of those, so we don't help there.
Do you have a report from city council?
Nothing really of note that we've been doing super lately. We've been taking up the work that the climate and sustainability staff is doing with outreach to the community about how to deal with decarbonization of buildings. That's kind of been that dealing with most recently.
Don't take any.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyman?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know how many of the new members watched last month's meeting. Maybe you did. You had nothing better to it. But anyway, I kind of went off a little bit during commissioner comments. And one of the things I talked about was like throwing a list at the chief and expecting that you're going to get anything to happen. And, you know, and I thought about it during the month. I really did think about what I said and whether I was coming across. But it's not for me to suggest how the Human Rights Commission should achieve its business. But I know for me personally, like I thought about writing, I was going to write Holly, copy the chair and say, I want Chief Skinner to come to this meeting prepared to tell us about the railroad and the homeless and what's going on and why we're acting, you know, for this big company that has its own police force and everything else. But then the fire happened to bring, and I'm like, okay, I'm not, you know, I chose not to do it, but I wouldn't come here and say to the chief, like, you know, tell me about this or tell me about this and expect it. And if I want to follow up, I'm going to email Holly and say, please ask the chief or please ask Julie to come next month prepared. So that my advice to the new members, unsolicited and, you know, out of place maybe, but it's just language with this commission, red lines, things that inform and are helpful. I hope that we will, as a new group, cohese around and do things and be effective, because that's what you know, and I want to hold Chief Skinner accountable, but not by, you know, just throwing things at the wall. So that's my plea to all of you to, you know, and yeah, welcome. So thank you for listening. Appreciate it.
So I hope you'll be here, glad to hear that we didn't actually incorporate that into the orientation for the new police commission members, because I think that your recommendation was fair and certainly deserves more thought than sometimes has previously been put into it.
Thank you, and I'll stop. I'm not going to bring it up again. You're on your own, Chief. You know, you're plenty capable of. You don't need my help.
It's not the last time.
Yeah.
Commissioner Parham.
Yeah, thank you. There are a couple of things that I wanted to address. The first thing that I wanted to address in my commissioner comments is the fact that I would like to ask the chair and also for folks that work in an administrative function to make sure that the goalposts are clear and that expectations are communicated in a concise and visible manner for new commissioners and for existing commissioners. I'd also like to point out that there was an unopposed candidate that ran last year, and just for accountability's sake, even though I would have kept my vote the same, I think that there should have been an opportunity for another counselor or for another commissioner to be nominated, despite the fact that I would have kept my vote the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Parham. Commissioner Rady.
I don't think I need to extend the meeting too much.
Well, you're here, so it's already going to be longer.
No doubt. Yeah, I want to thank you for welcoming us and briefing us and helping us get on board so well. I'm looking forward to being able to do something useful and constructive here and bring the experience that I have to the table for what it's worth. In line with being constructive, I do have to say that when we get to another agenda item, I won't be necessarily, but it will, I hope, be a rarity. It has nothing to do with Eugene Police Department or its policies. It has to do with the context in which they have to be applied. And there, I feel I must say something, but I'll be brief.
Forewarned is forearmed. Thank you. Commissioner Corson.
Thank you, Chair. I have no comments.
Commissioner Folks.
No comments.
Commissioner Price. No comments. And no comments from the chair this evening. All right. Chief, would you like to introduce your team?
Sure. They can certainly introduce themselves. The important part of this meeting, aside from you all informing and advising this police department on good police policy, and I can't reiterate enough that good police policy is good police policy regardless of where it's at in this country. And I will also say, I think that West Coast policing has far outpaced many other of our police departments in this state as far as its level of professionalism. And so part of why we're at where we're at today in professional policing is as a result of groups like this that are able to inform good language suggestions through your community lens on good police policy. But none of that work happens. You can advise all you want without staff here that kind of puts that in action. And it starts oftentimes with Holly. So I'm going to have Holly introduce herself, talk a little bit about your experiences, Holly, and a little bit maybe from a high level, kind of your role as the commission analyst.
I'm Holly Matthews, and I am the staff liaison to the police commission. I also support the chief as his assistant. I've been with the police department for 21 years, and my role is primarily to keep the commission in line with as far as the bylaws and that they're following the Oregon Public Records Law, and to answer any questions that you have, to be a resource. I'm the liaison between the commission and the city. So if you have resources or information that you're wanting to have, I can research that for you and provide it to you. I provide support to the leadership, and I'm just here to answer any questions that you have. Thank you. Glad you're here.
I am Julie Barong. I recently got married and my name tag has not been updated, but that's okay. I go by Julie Smith or Julie Barong. I have been with the police department. I think I'm going on year 28 now. I retired my uniform about 3 years ago, and I agreed to come back and do on a part-time basis to help with updating policy and accreditation for the police department. And so it's my role to shepherd policy revisions and development through the department and work with the police commission on recommendations of policy. I'm also responsible for ensuring that our department achieves accreditation and recertification of that every 3 years. So I did that at the end of 2021. And we are going to be due again at the end of 2024 for our recertification for that. And I have more stuff in my PowerPoint, so I'll just kind of end it at that.
And my name is Chris Skinner. I'm your chief of police, and I have been your chief of police for over 6 years now. Started in April 2018. And it's been an interesting time. I think when I look back on that time, and I think all of us can look back 6 years ago and never envision us as a community going through the things that we went through. And when you think about the leadership of an organization, a policing organization through that time, I feel very fortunate and honored that I got to be the person to help try and navigate those tough times. Sometimes we did a really good job. Sometimes we did do a very good job. But that's the one thing about this police department that you'll find is that we're very proud of the work we do, but we're not bashful about admitting when we make a mistake and trying to correct those mistakes. And so that's very much a mantra of ours. I've been in police work for 34 years in 2 different states and 5 different agencies. And so when I look at things through a lens, it's not through just a Eugene lens. It's through a lens of all my experiences, both small agencies and bigger agencies and Washington State and all the nuances of policing in Washington State and all the nuances of policing here in Eugene. Probably more important, I'm married to Carrie, who is entrusted with the safe and wellness of students up in the Beaverton School District and is doing really meaningful work up there. And my son Jackson will be 17 and my daughter Kendall will be 15 at the end of the summer. And so people that work with me know that takes precedent in my life, and I very much put them front and center when it comes to some of the decisions I make as a chief, as far as how I engage is making sure that my family is being taken care of first and foremost. Really quickly, this time, generally speaking, is spent with me being able to give you an update on what's going on in the police department. And oftentimes there's things that I want to update you on, but more importantly, you guys, through your liaison comments, oftentimes fill that bucket for me, because you'll often say something or have questions or make a comment that I feel is worth making sure that I give you pieces of information on. Sometimes I can give you information on the fly. especially if it's a high profile thing. But as Commissioner Lyman had mentioned, to give you a really thoughtful response, which this police department wants to give you, having the gift of time to be able to do the research and see statistically if that in fact is the issue, being able to research those things and be able to come with a thoughtful response is always much appreciated. But for the most part, I'm pretty quick on the fly. But in other instances, I'll need some time to be able to do that. The one update that I'll just give you, and then I'll kind of land my plane is, we recently just went through the 4th of July holiday, as we all know. It's this time of the year that I know that this police department and fire department will be challenged with the concept of fireworks and the enforcement of fireworks. There's some nuances to that people are often left with some level of misunderstanding. And so it's important as we communicate with our community members to articulate that while the use of fireworks have been banned in Eugene, it's not illegal to possess fireworks. There are some illegal fireworks, that's a state statute that mostly fireworks that are like mortars being shot into the air, that's illegal for anybody to possess. But many of the fireworks that people are buying are not illegal to possess, and people have a tendency to blend those two. The concept of having fireworks is different than using the fireworks. The other challenge that we have in the police department is to enforce many of the ordinance and laws that we think about you asking us to enforce. We have to develop some level of probable cause to believe these things are occurring. And in many, many cases, it's us being able to witness the use of, in this particular case, fireworks, which becomes really problematic and challenging when you think about getting officers in the right spot to be able to witness somebody, usually larger groups, and then who is actually associated with said firework that's banned from being used in Eugene. So there's just a lot of moving parts. And oftentimes our community feels like it should be much more simple than that. But from a due process perspective, we want to make sure that we're doing everything right. Every year, we're trying to iterate and find different ways that we can respond to more calls for service when we get these firework complaints. One of the challenges that we have in the police department right now is that we are down about 22, 23 police officers, which always makes it difficult to field the existing calls for service, let alone the additionals. There's opportunity to be able to staff those special teams or special initiatives with overtime. But a good example of this is to show you the month that led up to our fireworks enforcement or our fireworks or 4th of July holiday. That previous month involved 144 instances of drafting people to work overtime just to meet our needs. And when I say draft, that means they didn't sign up. We had to force them to come in and work. So when you have an exhausted police department that's being forced to come in and work, even for a few hours, 144 individual times as you lead up to something that you're asking them to voluntarily staff with overtime, it can be challenging. We saw that with the track and field trials. We saw it with Butte to Butte, and we've seen it with fireworks enforcement. So as we get more staff, as we create some health and wellness for our officers, that they don't feel as exhausted as they are, because we all know that officers make better decisions in the field. I'm hopeful that we'll have an opportunity to do something a little bit more robust next year.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that de-escalation and good policing takes more time. So to the point of Chief saying we're understaffed. I'll reiterate.
Who's first? I'll go with Lyman and then to Lincoln.
Lyman was just gonna say, thank you to the police department for the track and field. Like every time we have an event like that on the national stage and it goes off without a hit, I believe that you should get some credit for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Commissioner Lyman. That in partnership with the University of Oregon Police Department and the University of Oregon, usually taps anywhere from 40 to 50 of your Eugene police officers daily to be able to make that safe, to include specialty teams, specifically our EOD, which is our explosive demolition unit, sweeping the facility for explosives and managing contracts for the bomb dogs that come in. So there's a few moving parts to that, and we're really happy when we're able to pull something like that off that's on such a national stage. Thank you.
Counselor?
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you too for being part of keeping us safe during those sort of high profile events. They're on the news they're on TV every day during the whole time, and they have a high potential to have things go wrong. I got to 1 year go into the operations center, which was quite amazing how what actually goes on behind the scenes to keep that venue safe and everything. It's not just the EPD, it's the state police, it's a whole bunch of different other local police departments. There's the NSA or the Homeland Security is here, and the FBI is here, and there's just, you never see any of that, but it's amazing what an operation gets pulled off and coordinated to be able to act and be safe. So thank you.
I appreciate that. I mean, we will get a little bit, just in the reason I'm giving you some more information is for the benefit of our new commissioners, because you'll get used to knowing kind of more how the police department works. We'll get a little bit of a break this summer, but don't forget that come September, here we go again with football season. It's going to be a unique year for us being a Big Ten team and having new teams in town that have never been in Eugene before. Circled on the calendar is Ohio State, which is going to be a heavy lift when it comes to the amount of people coming into town, getting them to and from the stadium. 65,000 people are going to ascend on this community on those Saturdays and for those big games with standing room only. We are already in the planning for that, but we'll get a little reprieve and then we'll be right back at it this fall for football season.
Commissioner Carson? Chief Skinner, you mentioned the staffing issue that the police department has. In your opinion, is that a chronic issue that you're perpetually understaffed, or has an event happened that causes that?
I think both. I think what I see is our colleagues around the state are struggling with recruiting. We saw two things that happened that are contributing factors to where we are. The first predicate of that was some challenges with our general fund budget and some requests to hold some positions open to make sure that we could meet our budget goals. Anytime you do that and hold positions open, you can have a tendency to get behind a little bit with that. That alone was not so much of a concern, but then shortly right after that, we had the confluence of George Floyd being murdered and some of the social justice movements and much of the opinion around law enforcement across the country, coupled with the pandemic. And so we've struggled to recover from that. Many people that are finishing a 25-year career in law enforcement are choosing to step away the moment they can. That hasn't always been the case. And so we have people leaving after that career, trying to fill those positions. And we've had a few officers go to other agencies, but mostly it has been retirements that have been vacancies, or personnel action is another way to separate people from employment. So it's both. My peers are struggling with this as well, and we see ourselves emerging out of this. Right now, our recruiting has kind of on an uptick. Our hiring is on an uptick. The one thing that I would remind that you may not know of is in 2019, before 2020 happened, which was kind of some of the budget stuff and some of the social justice things that were happening in our country. This police department was fully staffed and overhired by 3 or 4 officers for the first time in history. We really were on a nice trajectory. So when we talked about adding the benefit of the community safety payroll tax, I was very optimistic because of that trajectory that we were going to be able to fill those positions and make a measurable difference in this community with the staff that we needed to have. And then those other things hit. And so now we're trying to build back from that. So we're playing the long game here, and we keep chipping away at it, but it's been difficult.
Yeah, in the 18 years I've been city councilor, that was the only year that they were fully staffed. And I was on the budget committee 10 years before that. And it's just very difficult to keep the police department fully staffed. I was actually surprised. I actually did it. Kudos to the chief, especially in a hard environment to get staff. Yeah, fully staffed up, but it's chronic. Yeah. And I did have a question for Chief, and I got a judge here, so I can ask it too. So Mike Clark brought this up a couple of years ago, and I thought it was a good idea, but it got shot down. And now that it's illegal to use fireworks, We constrained it and then we made it legal. The idea was for people to take phone evidence of who's doing fireworks and submit that to the police department. And we were told that that wouldn't work because timestamps can be fudged and things like that. What's your thought about that, Chief?
Well, I mean, there are mechanisms by which individuals can be the arresting person, for lack of a better term. And Judge, you're going to have to school me up on
Citizen
this.
complaint.
Citizen complainants can be technically the arresting person, and what that entails is, and then what we become is the facilitators of kind of like a citation or a notarized citation based on what you do. But what's interesting about that is that now you have to come to court and testify against your neighbor to do that.
When I was city prosecutor, the police used to send that to those individuals that wanted to do that to the prosecutor's
Right.
office.
And it largely takes the police department out of it, other than to be the facilitator of the paperwork. And what we've found is many people, when offered that suggestion, don't want to be that component. They don't want to be that person. Number one. Number two, the vast majority of our fireworks complaints that we get largely come in like, hey, I'm at 123 Main Street and I can see illegal fireworks like 100 yards north of me. And there's no general or specific address associated with this. Every once in a while you have that neighbor on neighbor issue. But most of this is, hey, I can hear them over here, or they're 100 yards here, or I can see them over my trees. And there's really no specifics that go with it, which makes it really, really difficult. The last thing I would say is oftentimes these are families letting these off. And so you have parents and their children or people from the neighborhood doing, and it's really hard to pinpoint, okay, who gets the citation in that situation? And because the possession of them is not legal, but whoever is actually using them or lighting them off would be the one that would get that. And so we want to be really judicious about that. And so we really err on the side of education more than we do enforcement for those.
Yeah, when we're having conversations about banning fireworks, a lot of it was related to safety and fire safety in particular. And we've done several years where we banned fireworks in 18th South because having the hills catch on fire was a prominent concern. But the ones that actually annoy people the most have always been the ordinance says anything going over 12 inches in height is illegal. So all those things that go up in the air and boom, explode or fly through the air are the ones that have always been illegal. And those are the ones that really get people fired. Those are the people that would want to go to court. Well, I talked to this one guy this guy shot a bottle rocket and went into his tree and lit his tree on fire. And he watched him do it.
Yes, the aerials have always been, kind of the mantra should be if it flies, it shouldn't fly. And the aerials have always been illegal. And yet they're the most visible. So when you think about getting a call from somebody, they're often calling saying, I can see an aerial in this direction, but I don't know where it's at. And so when you think about the limited resources we have, trying to drive around and do that. And then what happens is the minute the car starts heading up the street, they just put everything away. And so now you're just playing that game. And so it's challenging to say the least.
Commissioner Reedy?
Commissioner Tharson asked my question exactly. I would just add one other thing to it, which is, because I'm on the Facebook page of the department and I see regularly the recruitment, the new recruiting groups coming in. And we're still 22 to 23 light, which suggests to me there's a fairly constant outflow as well. The only thing that strikes me is that this is not entirely, I mean, it's largely a bad thing, but it does mean that we are getting presumably more younger officers, and this gives an opportunity for the culture shift in the department, which I think is fundamental to everything we're trying to do here.
I think that's a fair assessment and safe to say as we get older, everybody looks younger. But yes, I'm seeing a trend of much younger police officers applying for this on any given recruitment. And we have one going on right now. For instance, this weekend we'll be testing. It's a constant recruitment. We've got our recruitment down to 90 days turnaround. We're onboarding 6 times a year. We are the industry leader in being able to do this, based on my experience. And yet, I sat through background investigation review yesterday with 14 candidates, and only 3 of them passed. So we are not going to compromise on our backgrounds. We constantly, and that's throughout the process. That's where we kind of weed these folks out. We start with a physical agility test, and we offer them practice opportunities so that they're ready to go. We very rarely lose very many there, but then the written test will be another phase where we lose some, and then interviews, and then really the background is where we lose most people, because the background is probably more comprehensive at the Eugene Police Department than any other organization I've ever been a part of. The amount of money we spend to take background investigators and actually fly to locations and have face-to-face conversations with references and police officer candidates' backgrounds. Many agencies do not take that initiative. It's usually a phone call. We fly our investigators there, they ask tough questions, and they do some digging, and those background investigations are very, very comprehensive. And it reveals a bunch of things that we need to know about before I can say yes to somebody. And this last instance is a good example. With 14 backgrounds that were done, only 3 passed muster. So yes, we're getting young. We must have done a ton of hiring in the late 90s, because we've had a ton of people reach 25 years in the last year and step away. And so a lot of retirements this last year, which is why we haven't been able to make a ton of progress so far.
Vice Chief Shivers?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate it is nice to have new blood, so to speak. It does help shift the culture. It also takes training to get them up to speed as to what that culture is, what our policies are. So retention and recruitment has been a big issue for the commission. I encourage our new commissioners and anybody watching to look at our meeting from 4 months ago or so, where we talked about it. It's a perennial issue. It will come up again. I'm sure it'll make the work plan again in a year or 2. And I, for one, am very scared about the applicants that come to the department. I've seen a lot of people in my age group. As I mentioned before, I'm a volunteer with the Democratic Party, and I've seen a lot of folks express a concern and even fear of the police department. And I want to say that culture does not change if the people who want to change it are afraid of the cops and never participate in the system. So that's one of the reasons I'm here. Super glad you're here, and I encourage anybody watching to step up and participate however you can.
Commissioner Folks?
Is there a specific rule that I could look at the policy on your background and just curious as to how you do all of that?
Sure, certainly our background investigation, we can send that to you. Holly, can you just make a note? What we can do is send you kind of what our roadmap is for the background, what we do. There's a variety of things that we do, everything from what starts us off with a personal history questionnaire from the candidate, a massive packet that they fill out, and then we can send you some information to help articulate how we approach that. Why we choose to fly, where we choose to fly to be able to talk to people and those types of things. And then on the back end of that, these 3 that are successful, like I talked about, there's still a psychological and a physical that they have to go through to be successful. So there's another psychological evaluation with specific parameters around being successful in police work that they have to go through. And then it's only then that they become a part of the organization. So they're almost there, but not quite yet. But we're happy to send you that. Yeah.
Holly, when you send that, will you please include the link to the Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Committee meeting where Chief Skinner gave us a very comprehensive breakdown of that process? I think that may help. Chief, I'm going to take a turn up now, and mine is completely, of course, out of left field. I did email it 2 days ago.
Yep, I got you.
I know. So can you tell us about the policy for vehicle repair, and I noticed that the policy for fleet maintenance was included in our packet. The reason I'm asking is because I heard of a case with a siren not functioning in the vehicle. And I was told that sometimes with vehicles returned to EPD headquarters for service, it goes to the shop and sometimes doesn't come back for months.
Sure.
Is that typical?
Not typical. There have been instances where vehicles, depending on their unique needs, may take some time. Understand there's a few different moving parts to every vehicle that we have here. Some of our vehicles, first of all, our shops does maintenance on all our vehicles, but they do maintenance on every city vehicle, not just ours. So there's some competing interests there when you think about trying to keep a fleet, city of this size with 1,500 employees and all the complementary pieces of equipment. And when I say equipment, I don't, that's more than just vehicles. We got tractors and backhoes and everything else that get worked on. So what I will say is the shops are good about trying to prioritize public safety vehicles, both police and fire, but it does compete with everything else that's in the bays that they're working on. The second piece is sometimes the issues are warranty work. And so we're at the whim of Kendall Ford and when they can get us in and when they can't get us in. So that's another piece. The third piece of that is it also competes with, as new vehicles come in, especially for the police department, there's what we call an upfit process. So as you see the vehicles driving around, they look markedly different than when we got them with lights and sirens and graphics. And so the upfit of new vehicles is yet another strain on the shops to be able to do that. So we've got, for instance, 11 or 12 brand new police vehicles sitting at the shops waiting to be upfit. But what was happening, they haven't been touched yet, which can be really frustrating on one end. But as you take a deeper dive look, what just got finished was the fifth of our CSO trucks, which are the brand new Ford Lightnings, all electric vehicle that we're deploying in the city. And so that was an important piece of that, is to make sure the CSOs had their vehicles and the electric vehicles out there. And so now they'll work on the PIU. So there's a lot of competing interests. I'll just finish with saying it's a front of mind for me because the union has engaged me in dialogue about some of the delays that they're frustrated with. And so we are currently working with the shops and breaking open kind of a internal working group with the right people to at least open lines of communication, because oftentimes the narrative gets exactly that. Oh, it takes me 2 months to get my vehicle back, which is one way to communicate, but not always accurate. So we want to make sure that they have the right information. So we're on top of it.
For all of us, can you go over the acronyms, CSO and PIU?
Sure. So CSO is our community service officers. They are anchored to our community safety payroll tax. They are non-sworn. Oftentimes they'll be in a gray uniform. You'll see them in the trucks and the SUVs that have the really cool treescape landscape on it. They can handle calls for service that don't have suspect interaction. It's our way of saying, let's have police officers focus on what police officers should be focusing on, which is life and property safety in progress calls, and our CSOs can respond to some of the other calls for service so that we can do that. So that's the CSO. PIU is it can be the patrol interceptor unit, police interceptor unit. It's basically Ford's platform. If you look out in the parking lot, they're all Ford. If you were driving it, we'd call it a Ford Explorer. That's exactly what it is. When we drive it, it's a PIU because it's a completely different chassis and those types of things. And all of the new ones are hybrids right now. And so we're shifting, being mindful of our carbon footprint. We're shifting everywhere we can to hybrid and or electric vehicles. And so we've got 5 charging stations downstairs that are charging our electric vehicles as we speak, probably. So those are the 2 acronyms. Thanks, Sean, for that. Sometimes it's just easy for me. Yeah.
Any other questions for Chief Skinner? Oh, that's first.
Yeah, I think that Chief, a long time ago, asked you out of 100 people that want, how many actually make it into process, and you said 1. Is that still the case?
We are, so it's different. So like, for instance, this weekend, we had over 100 people apply with us for this weekend. Of those 100 people, we make personal phone calls to everybody, because in order to keep going down this process, we need them to actually show up on Saturday and take what's called the ORPAT, the Oregon Physical Agility Test. And it's more of a little mini it's like a mini obstacle course to see if you're physically fit enough to be able to do the job related functions of being a police officer. Last I checked, we had like 54 signed up ready to do that. So you lose a bunch right off the gate. You get 100 applicants, you just cut it in half because half of them aren't really serious about coming down and doing it. Then you start with those 50, and then from there, as you go through kind of the process, you whittle them down. We were really, really fortunate. We just onboarded, just swore in 8 yesterday. Our classes have been bigger lately, which is really good. So our numbers are better. So we're probably about a 10% success rate now. Out of 100, we hope to get 10. By the time we're said and done, some we have a little more, some we have a little less, but it averages out anywhere from 8 to 10%, which is much better than it was a while ago because we were only getting 20 and 30 people applying and getting, almost. I had a couple of processes that I washed everybody out of background. So,
right, and you started the process where part of the onboarding process they have to go through you too.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've always held really, really important as a chief, and I did this when I was in Washington State, is that before anybody can start, before anybody is given a job offer, they have to meet with me. So all the work is done, the background is done. I know everything about this candidate, and I need to get my eyes on somebody because I need to look somebody in the eye and ask them why us, why here. It's a fairly informal but more relational time for me to feel good about offering a job. And there's been a few that that have passed everything that I've just said no to, because at the end of the day, one of the things that's hard to really codify about my job is some level of trust that I just know. I get a little spidey sense every once in a while when I'm having a conversation with somebody. I'm just like, they're just not going to fit with what we're trying to accomplish here. And not all the time. That's been infrequent, but that conversation with me is really important because that's the first time we're having massive conversations about expectations, about how they show up here, how they show up for themselves, how they show up for their teammates, and how they show up for this community. And so that's really important.
Commissioner Reedy.
Yeah, I remember, I think the second time we had coffee, you told me that you had an ambition. That previously, if I was in a room and there were a whole bunch of people and there were some officers in plain clothes, I could make them. They would be the guys with the large shoulders and the short hair and the white faces. And your ambition was to have a department where you could have plainclothes officers in the crowd. No one would know who they were because they would be all kinds. And I've been watching the pictures of the recruiting classes, and I'm wondering if it's a problem in the application pool, it's a problem with the recruiting focus, or if it's just there just don't happen to be that many women who have ambitions to become police officers. I don't know. But
yeah, I do not think that we have a dedicated recruiting team led by, it's an all-female recruiting team in this police department. The sergeant and the recruiting officer are both female, and they deeply understand how to connect with other candidates. And in one case, the sergeant has been a police officer for a long time, and they do an excellent job of putting us front and center, and even a better job of when they get a lead, when they sniff out a lead, they are relentless when it comes to that. So I don't think it's a recruiting or a lack of effort around recruiting, and it's not just the female, our female officers. We want to recruit officers of color across the spectrum, and one of our biggest challenges right now that we're seeing is trying to recruit our Black officers. And so that's a real focus for us. At the end of the day, though, all the recruiting in the world can happen. We can have the best benefit package, we can differentiate ourselves above and beyond anybody else. And at the end of it, it does entail having that person take you in and really fly. And so, as we go through this, we've had many instances where we've had a fairly diverse candidate pool that has started in that 30, 40, 50, 60 people that have shown up. And then throughout the different portions of it, it gets whittled down. And we've had a couple of candidates of color in particular that didn't live in Oregon. They were going to come from out of state to be a part of the organization, loved what they saw here, but the community itself didn't feel like it was the perfect fit for them. Because when you're making a decision, you're making not even a decision about your professional life, but the neighborhoods you want to be a part of. And so, you know, I think when we think about recruiting for color, we think about recruiting for diversity in any case, it's not just a police department problem. It's a community problem. You know, what do we have in this community that, aside from a great place to work, can also kind of be the holistic approach to them feeling like they could see themselves living there. And so we hear that a lot with respect to that. So we continue to work on that and are making that a focus.
Chief, we have a question from Commissioner Parham.
Yeah, I'm just curious if what the status is with like a cultural assessment, and if there's also a cultural assessment that will be focused on racial makeup of the department.
Are you talking about the cultural assessment? Using that vernacular means, I think, what we've been talking about for the last several months. I'm assuming.
I guess I'm asking if there's going to be if the cultural assessment or cultural audit that is going on currently is going to be focused primarily on gender, or if there are components that are going to involve race and bias that may be in the department.
Well, interestingly enough, I'm meeting with the lead on this project tomorrow afternoon. She is going to be on site to get started on some of that work, and so I can have that conversation with her about the scope of what we want to have them pay attention to. So I think all of that's on the table, Commissioner Parham.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to, as best they can, I'm happy to have them cast a wide net when looking at the department to inform us kind of where we're at and help us define kind of where we need to go and maybe how we get there.
Thank you.
Chief, I have one final question for you, and it's an easy one. Are you still on the policy commission for the state?
I have cycled off of that. My term is up, and I'm starting to say no to some things just as things get really busy. What Chair Hawkins is talking about is for the last 2 years, I've sat on the board of police standards and training, specifically the Police Policy Commission, where we hear discipline matters from across the state and make decisions about decertifying police officers. So this state is one of the few states that has mechanisms in place that the DPSST, Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, actually go through the process of decertifying police officers because we have a really, really deep belief about not sharing each other's bad employees. And so there's unlike in the past, there's a mechanism today where if somebody leaves employment, whether they were terminated or left before the investigation was complete or while under investigation, there is forms that have to be filled out that trigger an independent investigation by DPSST to determine whether or not the behavior was egregious enough to warrant decertification. And we would hear those quarterly. And they take that very seriously, as you can imagine. So I passed that on to a colleague with Oregon Association Chiefs of Police, and but know that work is ongoing. And we actually have, I don't not remember who it is, but it's a community member here that reached out to me that has been asked to be a part of that, and I'll have to think about who that is. But we do have some local representation from non-police.
So I had, during orientation, I told our new commissioners that our chief is very engaged and responsive. I set that bar really high, and you did not disappoint. Thank you.
That's her kind way of saying it.
My kind way of saying
you
you talk
and
too
Jack.
much is, chief, I need you to simmer down.
Yeah, me and Jack will carry it.
Yeah, you two aren't allowed to sit
Yeah,
next to each
yeah.
other again. All right, Sergeant Barong.
All right, just reiterate, welcome everybody. And I just want to give all the credit to this idea of this presentation to Chair Hawkins, because she suggested it. And so I'm following through with her suggestions because it was a good idea.
We've seen that on the transcription.
Okay, so one of the things is that I mentioned that I do policy and development here on the department. And so I'm going to keep this presentation fairly simple and then offer question and answers after the end so that you guys can get more deep into some things that you want to know more about, but I'm just going to kind of keep this high level. So next one. So I'm basically going to cover the introduction, a little bit about me, how I ended up in this position. I'm going to talk about how policy revisions happen. And even though there might be something that suggests that a policy revision occur, there's a big amount of work that happens across the department to get that revision done before it even gets to the phase where it's published and reviewed by you all. And then at the end, like I said, I'll have some final takeaways and opportunity for you guys to ask more questions. Okay, a little bit about myself. This is I think I'm going on 33 in police work. 28 of it was here. I also was a reserve officer at the Oak Ridge Police Department and also a police officer with the United States Forest Service before I came to EPD. Here at the police department, I was 10 years as a police supervisor, 11 years as a police investigator at this department. I actually was hired in 1996. We were down 22 officers on this department in 1996. I had a hiring class of 13 individuals that were hired with me, and 3 of those out of the 13 were women. And I'm the only woman to make it all 25 years here at this department. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into recruiting and retention. But some of it is just having the gumption to say, I'm not going to quit, I'm going to make it for 25 years. Okay, and I was also on this department when we didn't have a University of Oregon Police Department. So we actually had a team of officers from this department that were assigned at the University of Oregon. I did do that assignment for 4 years. I was a downtown bicycle officer for several years. I was able to go back to that team as a supervisor several years later. And I also did my time as a street supervisor on the department, covering the whole entire city. In investigations, I did property crimes for 10 years. And then I became an acting in capacity supervisor for the property crimes units, financial crimes unit, and arson unit. I was an arson investigator and the supervisor of that team. And I was also a background investigator on this department for 20 years. And then when I was downtown, I'm a founding member of the community court program that is still functioning and going well in this community. And I was also the program supervisor for a team that we had, a community outreach team that worked with repeat offenders and homeless people in the downtown area. So I just wanted to kind of give you, I guess, a little sprinkling of what I did in this department and why the chief may have asked me to stay and do this position. So, okay. So one of the questions is that how does a policy come up for revision? And I wanted, I guess, I use this graph to kind of explain is that there are several ways that a policy could come up from revision. Everything from an employee request. And an example of that is that we had an employee on this department suggest, based on experiences, that we needed a pregnancy and lactation procedure on the department to help supervisors and employees navigate that whole process. And so we actually created and had that procedure published in 2022. Command staff requests, they may look at a policy and realize that they want to make some changes to it. And so it comes to me in that way. There is ORS, Oregon Revised Statute legislation. When there is a legislative session that comes up, there could be some police reform or some changes that need to come and become state law. Then we need to make our adjustment to our policies to make sure that we're in line with those requirements. Other city departments may ask for to ensure that we have policies and guidelines based on some of theirs. For example, the Parks Department just updated their rules and regulations in May of this year. So we needed to make sure that our policies align with the rules that were updated and changed with that. You all might decide that you want to review a policy or procedure, and you suggest that I come to the table with a policy for you guys to review. And I try to look through the policies and forecast based on your work plan that you guys come up with to offer policies that are going to be up for revision for you guys to select that to be able to work on. Again, police division requests by, like, for example, our financial department realized that some of our policies need to be updated to be in line with the city's procurement policies. And so they requested, and that work was done. Community recommendations. And so somebody asked me, is that really true? Can a community member actually affect a policy revision? And the answer is yes. You guys will all be reviewing policy 370, which is communications with persons of disability. And that was suggested by a community member that felt that our policy was outdated and didn't align with the way they perceived that they were communicated with a police officer. So that was my way of creating community trust, is that I said, yes, I would look at that policy. And when I looked at it, I agreed. We need to take this back to the table. It needs to be revised and come up to, our evolved community at this time. Again, policy outdated 5 years or more. I look at and see if I can work that in to get it revised. And then, of course, accreditation. So Department Public Standards and Training has certain standards for different things, like for backgrounds. They offer the guidelines and standards, and then we need to make sure that our policies here on this department align with that. And so there's lots of legislation and police reform and standards that that we need to make sure that we're in line with Oregon State guidelines. So that's all the ways that policy revisions come up for to be looked at. Okay, so I knew that there would probably be some questions on what is accreditation, and why are we involved in accreditation? So based on police reform that happened and some legislation that was passed, it's now going to be mandatory for all police departments over a certain size to be accredited by Northwest Accreditation Alliance. But this department was progressive and actually volunteered to be accredited in 2015. So we first became accredited in 2015, and then every 3 years we have to recertify and prove that we are still have policies and guidelines, and prove that the policy and guidelines are in line with the standards. And then I have to prove through police reports and photographs and documents that we follow those policies. So what are the benefits of accreditation and why? Yeah.
I'm gonna try to go to the website. Bear with me, folks. Here we go. Wait, nope. It's not on there.
That's okay.
Okay.
We won't
Right.
screw up the whole thing. But
All right.
what does accreditation do for us, and why should we be doing it? It helps measure performance and accountability for the department. It establishes a standard set of guidelines. And it's an independent body that is actually reviewing our policies and procedures, and reviewing on whether or not we're following the policies and procedures we have set, and that we're actually in line with the standards that are set through the state of Oregon. Is there anything you want to add on about accreditation?
How long does it take?
Yeah, the cycle is 3 years, and I must prove every year that we have the policies and that we're following them. So there are approximately 200 different standards that I have to go through and provide the policies that are affected by that standard. And then the proof of compliance. So I have to be constantly researching police reports and going out and taking pictures of officers doing an inspection on their vehicle to ensure that it's properly working. I mean, it's all down into the weeds that we have signage and locations, that we get our fire extinguishers inspected yearly. I mean, all these things down to the infinite that we're having to make sure that we're in line with. Okay, so back to policy. So once somebody comes to me and says, hey, can we look at updating this policy? I don't sit in my office and just come up with language in my own mind and create and revise the policy. I titled this slide engagement and development because the first thing I'm going to do if somebody comes to me with a request for a policy revision is I'm going to go to the subject experts, the officers or the investigative unit or the department that it's going to affect, and I solicit who wants to work with me on this. So I do that because if you have buy-in and you have the employees that are actually helping you revise the policies, that they're more likely to follow those policies, right? They have buy-in, they're part of the process. So I identify staff experts to work on the policy with me. I request participation from the affected work units. I look at industry standards from across the state and national. I want to see what other departments are doing on this topic. And I look for departments that have similar demographics as us, population, for example, other cities that have maybe a college also in there, a university in their city, because some of the dynamics and policies are going to be similar and in line. And I want to see what they're doing across the board so that, you know, Eugene is unique in itself, but also there are standards that we need to follow. And then, you know, what are other people, rather than recreating the wheel, what are other people already doing that's working? So I look at industry standards about other policies. I schedule meetings and timelines with the work groups so that they have time. I mean, many of the work groups have their regular duties that they're trying to do on a daily basis. And this is extra added work for them. And then, you know, I go through several revision and drafts, and at some point I send it out to all employees to have the opportunity to review the draft and have suggestions. And again, that's important that, you know, it's not when it's published and on the website and the chief signs it, it's not the first time that perhaps they've actually seen it or know that things are going to be changing. And then many times I have you guys review it, and you guys often offer great suggestions that we incorporate. And then once it gets past that, it goes through another final draft. The chief reviews it and decides whether he's ready to publish it, and signs a command directive to make that policy go into effect. Next slide. Some people want to know what the process for publishing a policy. So as you maybe have been told, but I'm gonna, for the new members, is that we publish almost entirely all of our policies on the public website. So if you're curious about the policies and procedures, they are available to you anytime you want to go and look at them, with the exception of one or two that are confidential, and those are only those ones deal with, like, I believe it's the SWAT team and some tactical considerations, that procedures that they do that's not public. Okay, you know, like I said, Chief Skinner reviews the drafts. I help write a command directive for him to announce it to the department that this policy was reviewed, it was updated, and it is now published, and you need to go and make sure that you read it. And again, it's published both internally and then on the public website. And then employees are notified and they're required to review the policy. And we are just going to be going to a new software that's going to track the accountability to ensure that the employees are reading, the policies, so. Okay, so that was kind of a high level, quick, review of how policy, development and how things are reviewed, in regards to revisions that are made at the department. And I wanted to make sure that I left open amount of time for you guys to ask questions.
Thank you, Sergeant. This was something that kind of, the two stuck me in Julie's office. He was trying to get rid of me for a few minutes, I think. And Julia started explaining this process to me and light bulbs went off everywhere for me. And so I did ask her at that time, several months ago, please bring this to the police commission, particularly when we have a whole bunch of new commissioners, because a lot of this I had never heard before and it was amazing. So thank you so much for pulling that together for us. We'll start with questions, Vice Chair Shivers.
Yeah, you mentioned you bring the policies to us when it's relevant to our work plan. I seem to remember you also, even when it's not relevant to our work plan, send them out via email, right?
Yeah, and sometimes if a policy is suggested by another department that it wants to be revised, and I feel like it's important for you guys to review it, I make the suggestion that, hey, you guys might want to review this or actually ask for it to be included in a packet.
There are times where something will start down the path. And in collaboration with staff, we determine that you guys need some exposure to it. And so we kind of jump your work plan a little bit and say, hey, and it's not uncommon for me to say, hey, I got to have my commission take a look at this. I know this is a non-starter without their eyes on this, because it could be something that I would get asked saying, hey, did the police commission look at this? And it's starting to get better and better at recognizing those things. So sometimes you'll see some slide underneath your nose that isn't necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, in the 3 years that I've been in this position, I went through and looked today. I was curious how many policies have been revised in that, and I'm pushing 95 to 100 policies have been revised in the 3 years. So a lot of work is happening in conjunction also with you guys. So, you know,
That's not just here, that's every, in the department.
in the department.
I mean, we look.
I don't have that statistic. I'm sorry.
We looked at cameras.
I still have it written down as policy Scott Lemon's 12 to 10. Other questions for Sergeant Brown? You did such a great job that they're just like totally in awe right now.
Well, thank you. And again, if you maybe you didn't want to ask it here in this forum, you can always email me or call me and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Or go through Holly and she can get the question too.
Thank you. All right. Well, and you managed to bring us back in time. Nice words. Our next agenda item is working on strike and labor disputes policy 313. Holly wrote up an agenda item summary for us. It's identified as number 9 on the police commission's work plan. And if I remember correctly, this one was actually brought to us by Sergeant Brown with a recommendation because it hadn't been looked at in a while, if I remember correctly. So we requested to review the strike and labor disputes policy 313, as there have been several strikes and labor disputes occurring within the Eugene community during the past 6 years. In addition, it has not been reviewed and or updated since 1999. The policy is included in our packet. It's several pages long, and there is. Right, you have to. I don't have to make a motion to discuss it, do we?
No.
Okay, because it's on our agenda already. Thank you. In addition to the policy and its current form, we also have the red line version that Sergeant Brock has provided to us. And Sergeant Brock, I'm assuming that this is the edits that you recommend.
Yeah, as you can see, it looks a little bit different from 1999 to the current version if you're looking at them side by side. And one of the things that we've done over the last years, particularly the last 5 to 8 years, is that we've made sure to update our format to include more of a purpose and scope announcement to the policy that's at the beginning. And then we go through and kind of outline each aspect of the policy. And we update obviously the emblems to make it cohesive with the rest of the department's emblems and the rest of the policies they're on. So that's why it looks a little different. So I wanted to stay with that, start with that that's the first process that I go through, is to kind of format the policy in a manner that's user friendly, I guess is the word that I'm going to use. And then there were some edits that we did based on a former commissioner, Ian Winbrook, in end of 2021, asked for us to look at all of our policy language and update it for gender neutrality. And so every policy that I revise, that is an automatic beginning start, is that it's reviews and the language is changed to abide by the agreement that Chief Skinner made, that we would revise all of our policies to make the language. And then I did reach out to some subject experts, the lieutenants that were in charge of our special units that would be probably responding to these types of situations, and asked them for input in regards to language changes that they would suggest. And I do have to say that strikes and labor disputes are few and far between that we actually have a police response to. And so they didn't offer any changes to the tactical considerations that they have in response to this, just because there are very few times. And I have to admit, since this is year 28 here on the department with me, I've never responded to a strike and labor dispute for a police incident call. So.
Yeah, we have a general policy to deal with protests and similar. Do you think there's a spot that should be referenced within this policy, or is it different enough that they belong as two separate things?
That's a good question.
So we do have 3 or 4 other policies, I know them by number, 316, 317, and 318. And they all have different aspects to protests, crowd control, and I'm trying to think what the other one is by heart. And so there was one suggestion by one of our tactical lieutenants is, does this need to stand alone on its own, or can it be incorporated into one of those other policies? And then the other question is that could we better reformat these 4 policies all together and separate out crowd control, and then have one policy that covers the different aspects?
I personally would love to see consolidation, if we can, and an incorporation of any big protest that has a strong element of leadership tied into it. Contacting that leadership is already part of our other policies. So they don't strike me as entirely, no pun intended, as entirely separate issues. It comes down to how cohesive is the protest. Do they have membership within that can rein in some of the behavior we don't necessarily want spilling out of the wider community?
Commissioner Lyman?
Thank you. Just to that point, I see it as warranting a separate policy simply because of the legal and kind of constitutional differences, and that you have the potential of workers crossing picket lines, and that which isn't the typical protest thing. You have this added, accommodating people that want to work and people that want to picket. So I think it's unique enough. Not to be nitpicky or anything, but so you say the format change, and I get that, but when I look at the red line, the format changes aren't captured on the red line. I just want to know, if you're proposing changes to a policy, I want to be able to look at a red line and see, this is what's different from what is in existence right now. And that way we can make an informed judgment about it. Are these good changes? And then if we cumulatively each time, if we move on and then the next version has the new changes, that's fine. But so So just when you said that it's different and I started looking and comparing it, it is a rough task to see, versus like all of the mark to show changes programs do show it. So my request is just that it's really clear, like we're recommending adding this. And because based on this, it really only appears, like you said, I think that you circulated it and there weren't very many comments and you have just a couple points that you want us to look at. But so otherwise, this is the same as, except that you've changed the format?
Correct.
Thank you.
The major change that actually jumped out at me was the changing of the removing the second person, where for the original version of the policy referred to you a lot. And I noticed that the new version of the policy is much more along the lines of what we've seen in our other policies that we reviewed. I think that's a legitimate request, Commissioner Lynn. Thank you. Commissioner Parn.
Yeah, I'm just I would appreciate if Vice Chair Shivers could elaborate as to why he's interested in learning about like the power structures and the way that ideas are generated by protest groups. Thank you.
So my comments earlier weren't about that. And after Alan's point of like, we have separate issues of like crossing picket lines being a concern. I totally see the validity in having them as separate policies. My initial comments were, however, merely about consolidating the amount of policies that we're asking our officers to read and remember. I tend to try to consolidate whenever I can, unless there's a good reason not to. As far as the nature of various protests, there are some that are more spontaneous protests, which require a very separate response than protests that the organizer contacts the chief and the department, asks for police presence, and some of the considerations are just different. So I wanted to highlight that at the outset.
Sergeant Brung, I noticed that we have two sections labeled 313.3. I'm guessing that's just a formatting issue. I had a question though on the first section of 313.3 under arrests. Item 5, discourage consumption of alcohol by picketers or others. From a common sense standpoint, I can see why that's a good idea. What sort of a legal approach is taken to that? If there is a picketer that is guzzling a can of beer, what is the officer actually supposed to do?
Well, there's some other municipal statute that would probably be applied to that. But there'd be considerations in regards to, say, for example, and I'm just going to go off the cuff here, but Steve help me out here, is that say the person's guzzling a beer in a crowd of 300 people that are hostile, right? They're upset. Is it safe for the officer to push their way through to maybe create more hostility in order to issue a ticket or arrest the person that's drinking, openly drinking? Now in a situation where you just had a person that was standing there drinking a beer openly, it's a ordinance violation. And so they could be issued a ticket. But would it be the smart thing to do in this situation to cross the picket line to enter a group of 300 people just to address the person that's drinking the alcohol? So
when you think about building policy, especially something that seems fairly obscure like this, because I can promise you not every agency has this policy in their deal. There are, as you build policy, it's oftentimes built based on experience. And so we may have at some time in the past, and if you look at this since 1999, I mean, this has been in place for a long time. And you look at the concept of kind of labor disputes and strikes, which are very, very organized, intentional types of things. My guess is, and it's just a guess, is that at one point people said, hey, we're striking so-and-so business, plan on being out there all day, and here come the coolers and lawn chairs. And with that comes some adult beverages. And so I think that's my sense is that there's probably that, because there's not been a moment in any of our other crowd management types of things that we've addressed that specifically in there. And so I'm wondering if there's some legacy experiences that informed that. And certainly I'm not sure it is value added in this policy in this day and age, just with just the infrequency that we see this, but I can see where that maybe happened at one point.
I mean, it is illegal to consume alcohol in public within the corporate limits of the city of Eugene. So this policy, I mean, I didn't catch it, but this policy actually is a policy saying, discourage law breaking. Where I totally get the use discretion, maybe more appropriate would be, officers should use discretion when considering alcohol offenses or something, because discourage is like, hey, you can break the law, please don't break the law. It's probably not the greatest thing for.
And part of our approach is to use that discretion for a variety of violations.
Sure.
You know, as to not incite, you know, or aggravate an already really emotional, tense thing. There's many things that we let slide in the interest of trying to keep the peace. And so this would be one of them.
Makes perfect sense to not go in and cite picketers drinking beers if that's appropriate under that, you know, moment and circumstance. So yeah, just maybe we change the discourage to something.
And I'm gonna date myself, but I'm pretty sure this stems from in the 1980s, they had some, I think, labor disputes in regards to some teacher strikes that happened. And there was some equities.
Maybe so.
Commissioner Lyman, do you have a motion?
No, I think if, I'm sure we're gonna see it again because we've never done one once. It hasn't happened. It's not gonna happen. So she's gonna, the Sergeant Barong is gonna bring it back, and if she wants to propose something a little different, if not, I'll think of something from, you know, but,
I have made a note.
Thank you.
Chris, for clarity on your earlier comment as to the first redlining, are you just talking about like, you would like specific places where the formatting has been changed?
Well, no, like the very beginning of this, the old policy has, the policy, I understand Sergeant Barong told us it's to bring it in line with the new formatting and everything, but the gender references change, all those things changed and they're not reflected. So if it came marked, you know, it would definitely be more marked up, but we would know the difference between the old and the new. And
so one of the things that we do as a suggestion, much like when we are negotiating contracts, is we have strikeout versions which show the old language struck out with the new language proposed. So on one sheet, you can kind of see, okay, how are we comparing the two? And so we'll work to get something that feels like that, where you can on one sheet see old and new.
Sure, thank you.
And then we'll worry about, I mean, and in this case, it's a little bit weird because it's a 1999 policy. All the policies are going to look different, but like in this case, leaving it in the old format with those strikeouts and then leaving it and then us reformatting it later for the final might be a really good idea. But we'll work on that. Yep.
Commissioner Reedy.
Yeah, this is, as I said, I gotta do this. And it won't be popular, but it needs to be done. Okay. This is basically a fair and balanced policy for the police to follow, and I have no objections to the words. I believe it is necessary to point out that in a labor dispute, the police department is not neutral. By its presence, it is a threat to those on strike, and it is a reinforcement for the employer. Whether there is anything going on, whether they do anything besides just stand there and observe, nonetheless, it is clear to everyone involved, they are there to enforce the law against the strikers. Specifically, strikers may assemble and demonstrate peacefully to bring attention to their cause, but they do not have the right to intimidate non-strikers or impede business. This is as a result of various policies put in, some to the past partially and others local, but to prevent strikes from being able to be effective. A strike is the withholding of the workers' services to the employer. And if the employer is able to bring in scabs and bring out product and continue his business without interference by his employees, the employees have very little power and very little say in their contract. I have been involved in a number of strikes. I was on the other side of the street. And fortunately, we did not have, well, some did have a substantial police presence, and we were there to reinforce a picket line where people had been badly beaten. I will be abstaining on this because I understand that this is an appropriate policy legally, but the law, to me, is badly unbalanced, and to the police will be the responsibility of enforcing it, and it's not their doing. But the result of their being there is to guarantee that the strike will be ineffective. That's not an intention on the part of the police or the individual officers or whoever wrote the policy. The policy is properly written, but the essence of it is not entirely contained in the language. That's all I will say.
Thank you. Vice Chair Shivers.
Yeah, it may surprise you. I studied political science and philosophy when I was in college. And I agree with you 100%. The nature of intimidation is their mere presence tantamount to intimidation. I think we need to enumerate that the existence of strikers there is not tantamount to intimidation, and that by refusing to work, they are inherently impeding a business. So I think we need a little bit stronger language. They're not allowed to actively impede people, but that's already, they can't assault people, right? That's already a law. So those two specific word issues, I'm on board with you.
Do you have a recommendation?
No, I trust Sergeant Barong to take a look at the wording, see what she can do. It might not be possible, like Dr. said. It's the policy is well written. The officers are there, I think, just as much to protect strikers as they are to protect business interests and community interests. That language is just a little bit biased.
Commissioner Wyman.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I think it's the police are showing up at strikes to keep the peace. And I don't think it's fair to put one way or the other. And I'm, you know, I wear the L proudly, you know, and progressive person, but I think, you know, I don't think it's fair to paint their presence. You know, I think if they weren't there and things got ugly, everyone would just raise their hands and say, where were the police? It's one of those things where, you know, they're gonna be there.
I have another question regarding the second section titled 313.3 for operational picket lines, sub item 3. If either labor or management personnel attempt to interfere with another's lawful activity, officers should bring that fact to the attention of the appropriate strike captain or management supervisor. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this and picturing this in action. So is the purpose of this to ask the management of that group of people to handle it internally rather than the officers having to get involved? And are they making recommendations to that team leader? Or simply saying, hey, I saw this happen?
Yeah, in practicality, what we would always like to have happen is that they police themselves and that we don't have to use police action. So if, for instance, on either side, whether management or labor, we saw something occurring that we felt like was going to either escalate the situation or was unlawful, we would give them first right of refusal at trying to coach their own teammate into a different course of action. It's not our hope and or intent to ever just be the first and last heavy-handed solution to solving.
Thank you. Section 313.4 regarding injunctions. put that in layman's terms for me, as far as what is actually, I have difficulty with it.
This is, this shows up a lot in our work. It's a little bit weird. It's a little bit hard to explain a scenario in which this shows up here, but in some instances, there may have been predicate behavior or information that would suggest the presence of a particular individual would be either result in violence, or there had been some behavior that happened where we have somebody on the other side that has been harassed and or assaulted or something like that. So this is very much like a restraining order that would keep an abuser away from the victim. This is a writ is often like a stalking order that where you have repeated unwanted contact. So for instance, if somebody in one of these disputes has been hammering away and hanging outside somebody's house and making phone calls and emails, and the petitioner has decided to get a stalking complaint against the respondent, and that's been served, and that's a writ, that's exactly what that is. That would preclude that person from showing up and being around the other person, and those are mandatory arrest types of situations. So that civil process shows up in a couple of different ways. Mostly restraining orders, stalking orders are the things that we deal with the most.
Commissioner Rainey?
Yeah, in a labor situation, an injunction will generally be limiting the number of pickets, limiting the amount of time they can say, hold up, trucks coming through, something like that. And generally, most judges are very happy to give injunctions in these kind of situations to handcuff the picket line as much as possible. I won't tell stories. I promise I won't tell stories. Okay. But that's the kind that rather than this kind, the injunction the chief talked about, I think is the kind that is in reference to this policy. And it's usually in terms of you may only have 2 pickets per entrance. You may only stop a truck for 2 minutes to talk to the driver. You may only have 15 people in the vicinity of this gate or something like that. And what the policy is saying is that if there's 4 pickets instead of 2 at the gate, the police do not go in and arrest 2.
I think it's probably both, because the way this policy is written is it's restraining a person. So there is a person's name on this writ. And then it says or persons, which might be speaking to what Jack is talking. Sorry, Mr. Reed. Sorry, Jack. I don't mean to call you away for anything. We're buddies, and so it's hard sometimes. But we've seen situations, whether it's strike and labor disputes or other disputes, where we see individuals that have been restrained by name from being within 50 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet from a place of business or persons. And that's part of this process.
Other questions or discussion? I have more, I can keep going. Commissioner Folks?
Is it standard to assign if there's a no strike? Is it a standard to assign an officer? Or is it an asked?
Well, this speaks to some of the similarities and the commonalities when we deal with crowd management, or regardless of what generates the people coming together. We in the police department, when we have something that's known to us, we try to assign staff to help build a really good operations plan and connect with the organizers of the either protest, demonstration, or the gathering to make sure that we have open lines of communication to be able to do that. So we will, at every chance we can, we will assign somebody to kind of be that staff person for us.
Thank you.
Sergeant Barong, with the blue comment sections, the first one is on section 3.3.5, where they're requesting who has the clarification of who has this responsibility. And so is this, the captain is in blue. Is that what you are recommending should be in there, or is that something that's still under question?
I think we're, because again, in talking to the lieutenant that I have reviewed this, it's not, we have to say that these situations are very few and far between. And so there was a discussion, and there still needs to be a discussion, like, who will this fall under? And who will be handling these types of situations? And so I think that was more of a question. It may not be at the captain's level. It may, I guess we need to make that decision.
The next question was on 313.6 about what about the CSOs? Are they considered professional staff under the definition for this particular policy?
I can just come right over the top and say that CSOs are not going to be put in a situation where they have to take this level of enforcement action. They're not trained, they're not prepared, they're not equipped. And so professional staff will not be operationally deployed in this way. So I guess we just solve that problem right there. But it's a good question because you will often see CSOs in other capacities, like you go to a game this fall, you're going to see them standing in the street directing traffic. They do a lot of crowd management, but when it comes to this type of thing, CSOs are not going to be utilized in this capacity.
And then the final question that was in blue regarding section C, the appropriate number, rate of passage, and speed of vehicles being allowed to cross the picket line should be determined. And the commenter said probably should say when this should happen.
Yeah, and I do have a volunteer that helps me, and she is a professional staff, and that's one of her questions that she has for me to answer. And I didn't address it before tonight. So, I guess I still want to mine that out with the tactical or the special operations lieutenant as to what we should do there.
Commissioner Lyman?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that one, because that one did catch my eye before. Like, now I'm going to take the position of like, why is it appropriate for the police department to determine how many vehicles can cross the picket line? I mean, I think that it's appropriate to speed and safety concerns are appropriate, but not to exercise, so rate, not appropriate number, rate of passage and speed just seem like safety concerns being addressed in the field. I'm on board for that, but based on concerns that other commissioners have raised here today, I don't think it is for the police to determine the appropriate number of vehicles that would cross the picket line.
So I would suggest that I strike letter C all together, or format in a different way that says that supervisors will ensure that safe
operation of vehicles crossing the picket line or something. Yeah.
And we agree with that.
Make sure the safety is not just of vehicles, but of people.
Thank you.
I see a person run down by a car.
No, of course.
Not funny.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Thank you, Commissioner Reedy. All right, any other comments or questions before we ask Sergeant Barong to take all of this back to the table? I knew you knew this was going to happen. All right, we will look forward to receiving this again in a future meeting. Thank you very much. We got through that much faster than you anticipated. Before we go into closing comments, one other thing I wanted to mention is that the Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Subcommittee is accepting folks who would like to join. We currently have 2 current commissioners on it. We can have no greater than 6, because otherwise that would be quorum, and that would constitute a police commission meeting. So for the purposes of our new commissioners and any of the incumbents as well, if anyone would like to join that committee, please let me know. Thank you, Mr. Reedy.
Chair Hawkins,
Yes.
would you mind explaining what that subcommittee is and how often they meet and kind of the scope of the work?
Sure.
Thank you.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Holly. The Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Committee was chartered by City Council. We were given approval from City Council to research and learn about how we can help our community can help make recommendations for the wellness of the officers. As the chief stated earlier, well officers tend to make good decisions. And so for the benefit of our community and for the benefit of our officers, dispatchers, investigators, the team at PPD, we would love to have some input on how to improve this, how and what sort of weight that we as the police commission can put behind some of the recommendations and the policies that will be put into place. We do meet on the first Thursday of the month, typically at the noon lunchtime hour. And we don't have a meeting for July because there is some roster issues with the revolving door of July for boards and commissions. And we don't meet in August because police commission takes the month of August off. So our first meeting will be in September. Anything else on that one, Holly?
I don't think so. The minutes are posted on the website and the Zoom recording. So if you're interested, you want to go back and see the work that's been done so far and just kind of get an idea of what the meetings are like. They are done on Zoom. So I would recommend doing that.
They are also.
Yes.
Chief, do you want to say anything about the committee? All right, so now I can ask for a show of hands. Okay. So for anyone who would like to join the committee, please raise your hand. Nice, great, excellent. Thank you very much. We will include you on the emails for the subcommittee. And with that, we'll move into closing comments. Polly, we didn't have anybody for other comments.
No.
Did we?
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Vice Chair Chivers.
Yeah, you can call me Sean. I respond to all of the above. As far as my comments are concerned, I'm excited to work with the new group. I really like the conversation today. Some of the things that Sergeant Braun brought before us, I didn't learn until I became chair. So this was a really valuable thing to have on the agenda. I don't remember if it's part of our work plan, but wellness checks is something that I'm increasingly concerned about, given the heat waves that we've been experiencing. And then the issues that Commissioner Booker brought, or I'm not sure of his title right now, but Commissioner Booker brought to us from the HRC. I would love to get an email of those so that I can go through and see what we can just put on our agenda and work out that way. So if you have your own concerns or anything you want on an upcoming agenda, don't hesitate to reach out. We try to be responsive. Thank you.
We do have welfare checks as item 15 on our work plan. So yes, that is something that will come up for us. Councilor Ye.
I do not have any comments at this time.
Councilor Zelenka.
I think what we did today for the new folks, the way that we did things, I wanted to eliminate a little bit for you. So the way that most folks look at these policies is they walk through them and they kind of walk through and say, does that make sense? Does this work right? I mean, get down to the word level. And a lot of the policy changes hinge on a particular word and the way that it's said in the policy. And so that's what this policy review process is really about. It's looking at it, making sure, if you understand it, like if you could tell it to your dog, then you understand it. And so walking through it and understanding it, and seeing if there's anything that seems a little off to you, check, highlight that, and then bring that up during the meeting and say, I was concerned about this particular part of it. What does this really mean? Because that's where most of the discussion around policy comes from. And some really good changes have come just because of that. They're like, oh yeah, well, we didn't think of that. Because some of these policies haven't been touched like this one, 1999. But this one seems in pretty good shape.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyman.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank Sergeant Braun, welcome back to the table and thank you for your work.
Thanks.
Chief, thank you. New members, welcome. Everybody, thank you.
Commissioner Parra? Survey a show to the Oregon country where they may be distracted.
No, I have no comment at this time. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And Commissioner Parham, thank you very much for coming onto the Zoom this evening. I know that you had it, you'd already had an excused absence, so I appreciate you making accommodations for this.
Oh, you're very welcome. Like I said, this is very important work to me, and I made it work tonight. Thank y'all for working with me.
Commissioner Reedy.
I want to thank you all for being so welcoming. I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be interesting and productive. I've had a thought that there are three things that really determine how a police force will police a community. And there are a lot of different ways that can be done, and we've seen many different examples. And I think we've got a great one here. But the three things are the leadership of the department, who have to have a vision and a desire to get the department to go with it, and knows how to work with them and the rest of the communities that they must serve, do that. But the leadership has to set an example and lead. But culture of the department is far more powerful. In the President Obama's Commission on 21st Century Policing, one of the chiefs pointed out that, or someone pointed out that organizational culture eats policy for lunch. And that will be, because policy is carried out right down there in the patrol car on the street. And the officer must be on board. There's, over 300 of them, all with their own minds, which will not automatically lock in on whatever the new thing is. But policy is the weakest of the influences on what kind of policing we get, because it's only words on paper. And the leadership will provide some of the spirit, and the culture will be where it really is adopted or not adopted and to happen. But culture is changeable and dynamic. Leadership is changeable and dynamic, comes and goes. But policy is on paper. So you have something that acts as a sheet anchor to the direction we want a department to go. And I've talked more than enough this evening. So I thank you all for your patience with me.
We're glad to have you. Commissioner Thorson.
Thank you, Chair. I want to echo what Commissioner Reedy said about everyone being so welcoming to us. I very much appreciate it. I appreciate the time taken for the orientation, for the sergeant's presentation of the background on policy review, because it helps us to speak for a few of us to hit the ground running, as opposed to just showing up and staring and not knowing what to do. So I'm very much appreciative of speaking for that. Thank you.
I wasn't show up and stare. Commissioner Folks.
Thank you all for your time, efforts, and energies and information. Quite a bit. I'll be absorbing quite a bit. So thank you.
Commissioner Price.
I couldn't have said about it, so thank you all so much. I'm really appreciate it being here. Thank you.
All right. I will close this out with a reminder. Holly sent us the information about how to request a ride along with you. Walk-alongs are also options. What are some of the other various options? I've heard of a virtual ride along. I don't know what
I
that
don't
means.
think we're doing that anymore. We did that during the pandemic, but you can do a ride along at the communications center with a 911 dispatcher.
Sit along.
Sit along. Yeah, so that about covers it.
And are walk-alongs still offered as well?
We will facilitate that with the downtown team. That's where that would happen. As much, and this is just a suggestion, as much as it certainly seems exciting to do a ride along or even walk along downtown with some of the things that happen downtown, especially with our new co-response model. which watching them in action is just unbelievable. Which is a different time for a different discussion. We don't want to lose sight of the important work that our dispatchers do. 911 communicators sit in those chairs every single day for 10 hours a day, working overtime, listening to people's grief for 10 hours. Very rarely do not get to get up and move. We've got treadmills for them so they can walk while they're doing it. We've done a variety of things to try and create some wellness for them. But I would encourage you to see just the absolute organized chaos that happens in a 911 center that handles, that gets 105,000 calls per year, a year coming into that PSAP. Don't lose sight of the importance of our 911 communicators in kind of this craziness of public safety that's happening in Eugene. So go out there and spend some time.
I would agree with that. I thought I was a great multitasker, and then I did a set along at the 911 center, and
Yeah.
apparently I'm just a baby.
Yeah, it's impressive.
All right. Meeting adjourned.
I get.